The alert tone cut through my morning coffee like a scalpel through silence. 3 sharp blips, pause, 3 more. Biocontainment level 2. I set down the ceramic mug and watched steam spiral toward the fluorescent lights of Research Station Delta 7's break room, telling myself it was probably just another sensor malfunction. My work tablet buzzed against the steel table. Priority alert. Biofreezer Unit BF47 temperature anomaly. Immediate technical response required. I swiped the notification and felt ice settle in my stomach. BF47. The unit containing specimens from the Markov expedition. Tissue samples I'd spent 3 years collecting from those impossible cave formations. Samples so fragile they'd undergo complete cellular breakdown within 4 hours at room temperature. Samples that represented the only physical evidence of extremophile organisms that could revolutionize bioengineering. The corridors of Research Station Delta 7 hummed with their usual mechanical rhythm as I quick-walked toward the biocontainment wing. My keycard chirped against each security checkpoint, orange status lights cycling to green with their familiar electronic beep. The familiar antiseptic bite of ozone-scrubbed air filled my lungs, but something felt wrong. The ventilation system's background hum carried a subtle strain, like fans working against unexpected resistance. Jackson to Central Control. I spoke into my wrist-mounted comm unit while walking. Responding to BF47 alert. What's your reading on the anomaly? Static popped through the speaker, then Amron's voice pitched higher than normal. Jackson finally. The diagnostic data doesn't make sense. Units maintaining -42 Celsius constant, but the power consumption meter reads 0. Completely 0. I stopped mid-stride. Say again? 0 power draw. Confirm 0. I've run the diagnostic sequence 4 times. The freezer's operating at full preservation temperature with no measurable electrical input. My mouth went dry. A biocontainment freezer maintaining preservation temperatures without power consumption didn't just violate facility protocols, it violated basic physics. The biocontainment wing's reinforced airlock cycled open with its characteristic pneumatic wheeze, but the pressure differential felt inverted. Instead of the sharp inward pull that indicated proper negative pressure containment, I felt a subtle outward push against my back. The environmental controls were designed to prevent any airborne contaminants from escaping the lab spaces. Air should flow inward, not out. I paused at the threshold, training warring with urgency. Improper containment pressure could indicate a catastrophic ventilation failure. Protocol demanded I abort entry and report the atmospheric anomaly immediately. But my specimens were in there. 3 years of irreplaceable research data that couldn't survive a containment breach investigation. BF47 occupied the central position in Laboratory Bay 12, a white enameled monolith surrounded by backup power cables and environmental monitoring equipment. The unit's external LED display showed -42 degrees Celsius in steady green numerals, optimal temperature for long-term biological specimen preservation. When I traced the thick power cable with my eyes, I found myself staring at an empty wall outlet. The heavy-gauge electrical cord lay coiled on the concrete floor like an abandoned snake, its industrial plugs gleaming under the overhead fluorescence. Not damaged, not burned, simply disconnected. "This is impossible," I whispered, dropping to one knee beside the unplugged power cord. The metal prongs showed no scorch marks, no electrical damage, no sign of system failure. Someone had deliberately unplugged this unit. But the internal specimens would have reached lethal temperatures within 2 hours of power loss. I pulled the handheld infrared thermometer from my equipment kit and aimed it at the freezer's side panel. The digital readout stabilized at -41.9 degrees Celsius, matching the internal display within acceptable variance. My hands began trembling as I lowered the thermometer. The external temperature reading confirmed what the monitoring systems were reporting. This freezer was genuinely maintaining preservation temperature without any electrical input. Through the small observation window, I could see the organized rows of specimen containers exactly as I'd arranged them 4 months ago. Tissue samples from the Markov cave system, cellular structures that had survived in natural ice formations for what we estimated to be 40 to 60 years. Samples that had already yielded breakthrough data about extremophile cellular adaptation. Samples that represented my shot at the lead research director position. My chance to move beyond grunt-level specimen collection into real scientific leadership. Standing there, staring at my impossible freezer, I made the decision that would define everything that followed. Instead of immediately reporting the anomaly to my supervisor, I reached for my diagnostic tablet. Just a quick analysis. Just enough data to understand what I was seeing before triggering a facility-wide investigation that could shut down my research indefinitely. Investigators from environmental safety didn't care about scientific careers. They cared about containment protocols and liability exposure. My tablet established connection with BF-47's internal diagnostic systems, and data cascaded across the screen in neat columns of impossibility. Internal temperature, minus 42.1 degrees Celsius. Compressor system, offline. Refrigeration cycle, offline. Electrical consumption, 0.0 watts. Every single indicator confirmed what my eyes were telling me. This freezer was maintaining perfect preservation conditions while consuming no measurable power. "Jackson," Amron's voice crackled from the intercom mounted near the bay entrance. "I'm seeing some irregular readings from environmental systems. Your section is showing atmospheric anomalies. Status report." I glanced up at the security camera bracketed in the corner, its red recording LED steady and unblinking. "Everything's normal down here. Running extended diagnostics on BF-47. Give me 10 more minutes." What I didn't mention was that my diagnostic tablet was now automatically scanning adjacent units and showing similar impossible readings from 3 other freezer units in the neighboring bays. BF-45, BF-46, and BF-48, all showing 0 power consumption, all maintaining preservation temperatures that should have been impossible without active refrigeration systems. A sharp metallic taste flooded my mouth, like I'd been sucking on copper pennies. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it was unmistakable, coating my tongue with an almost electric bitterness. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered once, dimmed perceptibly, then stabilized at a lower brightness level. When I looked down at my hands, tiny blue sparks were jumping between my fingertips and the tablet's aluminum casing. Not painful, but distinctly wrong, like static electricity flowing in reverse, building charge instead of dissipating it. My tablet screen glitched. For exactly 3 seconds, the temperature readings shifted to something physically impossible. Minus 273.1 degrees Celsius. Absolute zero. Temperature that would instantly destroy any organic matter at the molecular level. Then the display snapped back to minus 42 degrees, and I told myself it had been a display malfunction. Software error. Nothing more than a processing glitch in aging hardware. But my stomach clenched with the knowledge that I was looking at something that violated every principle of thermodynamics I'd learned in 17 years of research. Something that shouldn't exist in any laboratory on Earth. The intercom crackled with electronic feedback. "Jackson, this is Control Central. We need an immediate status update. Environmental monitoring is showing irregular power consumption patterns from Laboratory Bay 12. I keyed my comm unit, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Understood, Control. Diagnostic sequence is nearly complete. No immediate safety concerns. But even as I spoke, I was walking toward BF-48, the next unit in the sequence. Its heavy power cable also lay disconnected, coiled neatly on the floor beside the wall outlet. Its LED display showed the same impossible minus 42 degrees Celsius. I looked back at the small photograph clipped to the corner of my tablet. The Markov expedition team posed in front of the cave entrance where we discovered these specimens. 6 researchers, including myself, grinning with the excitement of a potentially groundbreaking find. 3 years of planning, 8 months in the field, enduring sub-zero temperatures and equipment failures to extract samples from ice formations that predated human civilization. A discovery that could revolutionize our understanding of life in extreme environments. Research that was now contained in freezers that couldn't possibly be functioning. I reached toward my comm unit to report the anomaly, then hesitated with my thumb hovering over the emergency alert button. Once I pressed that button, everything would change irrevocably. Investigators would flood the facility. My specimens would be quarantined pending safety review. My research could be suspended for months while outside experts determined what had malfunctioned. Instead, I found myself approaching BF-48 and placing my palm against its exterior panel. The metal surface felt cold, properly cold, exactly as it should, but when I lifted my hand, a distinct static shock traveled up my forearm. Not painful, but fundamentally wrong somehow, like electricity moving against its natural flow. The copper taste in my mouth intensified until I could barely swallow. I told myself this was all standard scientific investigation, that I needed to gather sufficient data before filing an incident report. But in the part of my mind where rational thought couldn't penetrate, I knew I was making the first catastrophic mistake in what was about to become the worst crisis of my career. 43 minutes after discovering BF-47's impossible operation, I wasn't alone anymore. Amren's footsteps echoed through the containment bay as she approached my position at BF-51, the 7th unpowered unit I'd discovered. Her usually neat lab coat hung wrinkled, and dark circles shadowed her eyes like she hadn't slept. When she spoke, her voice carried the tight control of someone fighting panic. "Jackson, we need to talk. Now." I looked up from my tablet, where impossible readings continued scrolling across the screen. 7 biofreezers, all unplugged, all maintaining perfect preservation temperatures while consuming 0 electrical power. "Let me guess, you found more." 12 units in sections C and D, all unpowered, all maintaining temperature. She pulled out her own diagnostic tablet, hands trembling slightly as she scrolled through data. "But that's not the worst part. Look at this." She showed me her screen. Environmental monitoring data from across the facility, timestamps showing the last 4 hours. Power consumption in the biocontainment wing had dropped by 60%, while temperature maintenance remained constant across all units. 60%, I repeated, the numbers not making sense in my head. That's not possible. The refrigeration systems are the largest power draw in the facility. I've been pulling records for the past hour. Every single biocontainment unit in sections A through D is running without external power. 26 units total, maintaining perfect preservation environment for specimens that would be destroyed at room temperature. The copper taste in my mouth intensified. I'd been so focused on my own specimens in BF-47 that I hadn't considered the scope of what we were looking at. 26 units meant dozens of different research projects. Millions of dollars in irreplaceable biological material. "Did you call this into central control?" I asked, though something in her expression told me the answer. "I tried." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The communication system isn't responding properly. I can send status updates to local terminals, but external communications keep timing out. IT says they're investigating intermittent connectivity issues." A chill that had nothing to do with the unpowered freezers ran down my spine. Intermittent connectivity issues? During a facility-wide anomaly? Gets better. I ran diagnostics on the facility's main power grid. She swiped to a new screen, showing electrical consumption charts that made my engineering training scream in protest. "We're drawing 40% less power than normal, but all systems show full operational status." "The math doesn't work, Jackson. Energy is being conserved or replaced by something we can't measure." I stared at the data, feeling like I was looking at a fundamental violation of physics. "What about backup power? Emergency systems?" All showing green. Full battery reserves, generators on standby, automatic systems responding normally. She paused, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Except when I tried to manually activate emergency protocols 10 minutes ago, the system locked me out. Said I don't have sufficient clearance. That's impossible. You're level 4 certified for emergency response." "Apparently not anymore." The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "The system shows my clearance as level 2, insufficient for facility-wide emergency activation. When I contacted personnel to verify my credentials, they said they'd have to investigate the discrepancy. Communication failures, power anomalies, security clearance changes. Either we were experiencing the most comprehensive system failure in facility history, or someone was deliberately manipulating our access to information and control systems." "Show me the clearance database," I said, pulling out my own tablet. She shook her head. "That's the thing, I can't access it anymore. The personnel database requires level 3 clearance, which apparently I no longer have." I swiped through my security credentials on my own device. Lead biocontainment technician, level 4 clearance, access to emergency protocols and external communication systems. All showing green status. But when I tried to access the personnel database, my tablet displayed the same message. "Insufficient clearance, level 3 required." "This is impossible," I muttered, staring at the error message. I had level 4 access this morning when I logged in. "Welcome to my morning." Amren's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. "Oh, this is perfect. Facilities wants us to remain in current sections until technical maintenance can be completed on the environmental systems. Remain in sections? That sounds like lockdown protocol. Without calling it lockdown, she showed me the message. Standard facility memo template, but the language was wrong. Instead of direct orders, it used phrases like recommend remaining and suggest avoiding section transitions until further notice. Suggestions, not orders. Like someone was trying to keep us contained without triggering official lockdown procedures that would automatically notify outside authorities. Amren, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. I looked directly at her, watching for any sign of deception. Have you told anyone else about what you found? Anyone outside this facility? I tried. External communications keep failing at the routing stage. Phone lines show connectivity, but calls don't complete. Internet access is temporarily limited due to scheduled maintenance. She made air quotes around the phrase. Scheduled maintenance that nobody told us about. The taste of copper grew stronger, and I noticed the overhead fluorescent lights were definitely dimmer than they'd been an hour ago. Not flickering, just gradually losing intensity like batteries slowly draining. How many people are in the facility right now? Skeleton crew. It's Saturday, remember? Just essential personnel. She scrolled through her tablet. According to the duty roster, 12 people total. But I've only seen 4 others since this morning, and 2 of those were heading toward the exit when I came to find you. Heading toward the exit. Did they leave? Don't know. The exit logs require Level 3 clearance, I finished. Which we apparently don't have anymore. We stood in silence for a moment, the implications settling between us like toxic gas. Isolated from outside communication. Security clearances mysteriously reduced. Facility systems showing impossible energy consumption. And 26 biocontainment units operating without power while maintaining temperatures that would preserve biological specimens indefinitely. Jackson, Amren said quietly, what if this isn't a malfunction? What do you mean? What if someone wanted to isolate us? What if the communication failures and clearance changes aren't accidental? She gestured toward the unpowered freezers. What if someone needs us to stay here while they figure out how to, I don't know, study this or cover it up? The thought had been lurking at the edges of my mind, but hearing it spoken aloud made my stomach clench. You're talking about conspiracy theory stuff. This is a research facility, not some corporate cover-up scenario. Is it? Her voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. How much do you actually know about what Research Station Delta 7 studies? I mean really know, beyond your own specimens. I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. My clearance had always been project-specific. I knew the biocontainment protocols, the safety systems, the technical specifications of my equipment. But the larger research agenda, the funding sources, the administrative structure above Dr. Hendricks. Exactly, Amren said, reading my expression. We're specialists. We know our little corner of this place, but not the whole picture. And right now, someone wants to keep us in our little corner, while something impossible is happening to the laws of physics. My tablet chimed with a message. Facility maintenance requesting status update on biocontainment anomaly investigation. Please remain in current section pending arrival of technical support team. Technical support team? I showed Amren the message. We are the technical support team for biocontainment issues. Not anymore, apparently. Her tablet showed the same message. Look at the timestamp. This was sent 12 minutes ago, but we're just receiving it now. Message delay. Just like the communication failures. Someone's controlling information flow, I realized. Deciding what messages we receive and when. And deciding what clearance levels we have. She looked around the containment bay, as if seeing it for the first time. And maybe deciding what we're allowed to discover about our own facility. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then steadied at an even dimmer level. In the reduced lighting, the LED displays on the unpowered biofreezers seemed to glow with unnatural intensity. Minus 42 degrees Celsius across all units. Steady. Impossible. We need to get to central control, I said. Direct access to the main systems, full administrative override capability. Central control requires level 5 clearance. I know someone who has it. Amren raised an eyebrow. Who? Tyvra. Senior systems engineer. She has level 5 clearance to override lockdown protocols. I started walking toward the bay exit, then stopped. Assuming her clearance hasn't been mysteriously reduced too. And assuming she's still in the facility. Amren fell into step beside me. And assuming she'll believe what we're telling her instead of thinking we're having some kind of shared psychotic episode. We reached the containment bay exit, where the security scanner waited for our key cards. I swiped mine first. Access granted. Remain in designated section. The door didn't open. "Oh, that's not ominous at all," Amryn muttered, swiping her own card. Access granted. Remain in designated section. Still no door movement. "So we're locked in," I said, stating the obvious because my mind was struggling to process the escalating situation. Soft lockdown. No alarms, no official containment protocol, just stuck. With 26 biocontainment units that are somehow operating in violation of basic physics. Amryn leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. And no way to call for outside help. I tried my keycard again, this time holding it against the scanner for a full 10 seconds. The display flickered, showed processing for longer than normal. Then, access granted, security override required. Security override? I'd never seen that message before. What kind of security override? Amryn's tablet chimed again. Another facility message, but this one was different. Instead of the standard memo template, it was a direct communication from central control. She read it aloud. All personnel in sections A through D are to remain in current positions pending resolution of minor environmental anomaly. Technical team en route. Estimated resolution time 6 to 8 hours. Refreshments and temporary accommodations will be provided as needed. 6 to 8 hours, I repeated. They're planning to keep us locked in here for most of the day. While they do what, exactly? Figure out how our biofreezers are violating thermodynamics. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Or figure out how to make this problem disappear without anyone asking inconvenient questions. The lights flickered again, and this time I noticed something new. When the illumination dimmed, the temperature displays on the unpowered biofreezers seemed to brighten proportionally, as if the energy that should have been powering the facility lighting was somehow being redirected to maintain specimen preservation. Amryn, I said slowly, what if the energy isn't being replaced? What if it's being redirected? From where? I gestured at the dimming lights, then at the impossibly functioning freezers. From the rest of the facility. What if something is redistributing our power consumption, prioritizing biocontainment over everything else? Something like what? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's smart enough to manipulate our communication systems, our security clearances, and our access permissions. I looked at her directly. And it doesn't want us leaving until it's finished doing whatever it's doing. The intercom system crackled to life, filling the containment bay with static. Then a voice I didn't recognize, male, professional, with a slight electronic distortion that suggested transmission through multiple relay points. Attention personnel in biocontainment sections. Please remain calm and in position. Technical support is addressing the environmental anomalies. Normal operations will resume shortly. Thank you for your cooperation. Amryn and I looked at each other. Neither of us had heard that voice before, and I knew everyone on the facility's regular staff. Technical support, she repeated. Who exactly is this technical support team? And why, I added, do they sound like they're calling from somewhere far away instead of from inside our own facility? The intercom clicked off, leaving us alone with the hum of impossible machines and the growing certainty that whatever was happening at Research Station Delta 7, we were no longer in control of it. And maybe we never had been. 3 hours trapped in the biocontainment bay had given me too much time to think. The emergency access panel I'd been working on for the past 40 minutes finally responded to my improvised bypass, clicking open to reveal manual override switches that shouldn't have been necessary in a properly functioning facility. Got it, I called to Amryn, who was documenting temperature readings from our impossible freezers. Manual door release is still functional. She looked up from BF51, where the display still showed -42 degrees despite the unit being completely disconnected from facility power. You sure we want to leave? At least here we know what we're dealing with. 26 units violating physics isn't exactly comforting. I flipped the manual release, and the containment bay door finally opened with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a sigh of relief. Besides, we need answers. And Tyvra has level 5 clearance. We stepped into the corridor, and immediately I knew something was wrong beyond the power anomalies. The hallway lighting was dimmer than it had been this morning, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the white walls look jaundiced. But more disturbing were the sounds, or lack of them. No ventilation hum, no electrical buzz from the overhead fixtures, no distant activity from other parts of the facility. It's too quiet, Amryn whispered, echoing my thoughts. Saturday skeleton crew, I reminded her, but my voice lacked conviction. Even with minimal staff, Research Station Delta 7 never felt this empty. We made our way towards central control, passing through sections I'd walked hundreds of times, but that now felt foreign. Emergency lighting strips along the floor were active, suggesting backup power protocols, yet the main systems were supposedly operational. Another impossibility in a day full of them. Jackson. Amron stopped abruptly, pointing at a security checkpoint we were approaching. Look at the access reader. The checkpoint scanner was displaying a message I'd never seen before. Section restricted. Authorized personnel only. But underneath, in smaller text, biometric verification required, retinal scan initiated. Retinal scan? I'd never seen this facility use retinal scanning. Since when does Delta 7 have biometric security? Since never. Amron approached the scanner cautiously. Our security system is card access and PIN verification. Basic stuff. As we got closer, the scanner activated automatically, projecting a red laser grid that swept across our faces. The display changed, scanning. Processing. Identity confirmed, Jackson Torres, biocontainment specialist. Access granted. Then scanning. Processing. Identity confirmed, Amron Valdez, research coordinator. Access restricted, clearance insufficient. Restricted? Amron stared at the display in disbelief. I've walked through this checkpoint every day for 2 years. I tried to remember if there had been any security upgrades recently, any facility modifications that might explain advanced biometric scanning. Nothing came to mind. When did they install retinal scanners? They didn't. The voice came from behind us, and we both spun around. Zeph emerged from a side corridor, his security uniform wrinkled, and his usually perfect posture slouched with exhaustion. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept, and his normally steady demeanor showed cracks of anxiety I'd never seen before. Zeph, thank God, I said. We've been trying to reach someone in authority. The biocontainment systems are operating without power sources, displaying impossible energy conservation, while facility communications are compromised and security clearances are being mysteriously altered. He finished my sentence with a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, I know. Amron stepped forward. You know, how long has this been going on? That depends on how you define this. Zeph gestured at the retinal scanner. The biometric security upgrade happened overnight. All checkpoint scanners were replaced with advanced units featuring retinal identification, voice analysis, and biological signature matching. Replaced by who? I asked. There was no maintenance scheduled. Replaced by the same technical support team that's been making a lot of changes around here. His voice carried bitter emphasis on the phrase. Changes that somehow don't appear in any official work orders or facility modification logs. The retinal scanner chimed again. Secondary authorization required. Security officer verification needed. Zeph stepped up to the device, which immediately began scanning. Identity confirmed. Zeph Matthias, environmental safety officer. Access granted. Escort authorized. Escort authorized? Amron read the display. What does that mean? It means, Zeph said grimly, that I can authorize your passage through security checkpoints, but only while accompanying you. You can't move freely through the facility without a security escort. Since when? I demanded. Since this morning, apparently. Along with the communication restrictions, the clearance modifications, and about a dozen other temporary security enhancements that went into effect while we were all focused on the power anomalies. We passed through the checkpoint, the scanner tracking our movement with unnerving precision. As we walked, Zeph continued his explanation. I started noticing discrepancies around 6 a.m. Small things at first, duty rosters showing different personnel assignments than yesterday, some equipment moved to new locations, minor policy changes that nobody remembered implementing. He paused at an intersection, checking both directions before continuing. Then the big stuff started. Like what? Amron asked. Like the facility's official research mandate being quietly updated overnight. According to current documentation, Research Station Delta 7 has been conducting anomalous energy phenomenon investigation for the past 18 months. I stopped walking. That's impossible. We're a biocontainment and specimen preservation facility. Are we? Zeph pulled out his tablet, showing us an official document that made my stomach drop. Current facility charter, updated this morning, Primary mission is investigation and containment of anomalous energy manifestations affecting biological preservation systems. The document looked authentic, proper letterheads, official signatures, administrative codes that matched Delta 7's standard formatting. But the content described a completely different facility than the one I'd been working at for 3 years. "This is insane," Amron muttered. "They can't just retroactively change what our facility does. They can if they control the information systems." Zeph swiped to another screen. "Look at this. Personnel records showing all current staff were hired specifically for anomalous phenomena research. According to these files, your biocontainment expertise was requested because of your experience with temperature-stable biological preservation under non-standard energy conditions." "I don't have experience with non-standard energy conditions," I protested. "I maintain freezers and monitor specimen storage. Not according to your updated personnel file." He showed me my own official record, which now included research credentials I'd never earned and project experience that never happened. Graduate work in anomalous thermodynamics, 5 years experience with paranormal biological preservation, specialist certification in unexplained energy phenomena. The corridor around us seemed to shift slightly, as if the walls were breathing. The lighting flickered once, then stabilized at an even dimmer level. "Zeph," I said carefully, "how long have you known about this?" "Known about what specifically?" "About the facility's real purpose. About whatever research Station Delta 7 actually does." He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd been carrying secrets too long. 6 months. Amron grabbed his arm. 6 months? You've known for 6 months that something was wrong here. Not wrong exactly. Different. He pulled away gently but firmly. I started noticing inconsistencies in the security logs. Personnel coming and going who weren't on any official roster. Equipment deliveries that didn't match our inventory records. Research materials being moved to sections of the facility that supposedly didn't exist. Sections that don't exist? My voice cracked slightly. Sublevels. Below the main facility. According to official blueprints, Delta 7 has 3 levels above ground and 1 basement level for utilities and storage. He gestured toward the floor. But the elevator system has access codes for 5 sublevels, and the power consumption data suggests something big is running down there. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. The power anomalies. The energy that's being redirected to keep our biofreezers running. "It's not being redirected," Zeph said quietly. "It's being supplemented. Something in the lower levels is generating additional power that's being fed into the biocontainment systems." Generating power how? That's the question, isn't it? He started walking again, leading us deeper into the facility towards central control. And I think the answer is why they needed us locked in here while they resolved the anomaly. We reached another security checkpoint, this one requiring not only retinal scanning, but also voice verification, and what the display ominously called biological signature confirmation. The scanner extended a small probe that looked like it wanted a blood sample. Biological signature? Amron stepped back from the device. "What kind of signature?" "Chemical analysis of cellular composition," Zeph read from the scanner's information display. "Designed to detect anomalous biological modifications or exposure to non-standard energy fields." Non-standard energy fields. I felt that familiar copper taste returning to my mouth. Like whatever's keeping our freezers running? The scanner chimed, "Biological analysis required for passage. Place fingertip on sampling probe." "And if we refuse?" Amron asked. "Then we don't get to central control," Zeph said. "And we don't get answers about what's really happening here." I looked at the probe, then at my companions. We'd come too far to turn back now. If they wanted to hurt us, they wouldn't need our cooperation. I pressed my finger to the sampling probe, feeling a brief sting as it collected whatever biological data it needed. The scanner hummed for nearly 30 seconds before displaying, "Jackson Torres, biological signature normal. Access granted." Amron went next, her face pale but determined. "Amron Valdez, biological signature normal. Access granted." Zeph's scan took longer, the display cycling through multiple screens of data before finally showing. "Zeph Matthias, biological signature anomalous. Exposure detected. Access granted under escort protocol." "Exposure detected?" Amron stared at the readout. "Exposure to what?" Zeph's face was grim. "To whatever's been generating power in the sublevels for the past 6 months." The checkpoint opened, But instead of the familiar corridor leading to central control, we found ourselves facing an elevator I'd never seen before. The call button was already illuminated, and the doors stood open, revealing an interior with controls for levels that shouldn't exist. "Well," I said, looking at buttons labeled SL1 through SL5, "I guess we're going down. Are we sure about this?" Amryn asked, but she was already stepping into the elevator. "No," Zeph replied, following her. "But I'm tired of not knowing what I've been guarding for the past 6 months." I joined them in the elevator, and the doors closed automatically. The control panel showed our current location as ground level, with our destination already selected, SL3. "Sublevel 3, I read aloud. "Any idea what's down there?" "According to the facility schematics that were updated this morning," Zeph said, "that's where the primary research laboratory is located. The one investigating anomalous energy phenomena affecting biological systems." The elevator began descending, and I could feel the pressure change in my ears. We were going much deeper than any basement level should be. "Zeph," I said as the floors counted down, "when you said you've been guarding this place for 6 months, what exactly have you been guarding it from?" "That's just it," he replied, watching the display count past levels that officially didn't exist. "I never knew if I was keeping people out." The elevator stopped at SL3, and the doors opened to reveal a corridor that looked nothing like the rest of Research Station Delta 7. Advanced lighting systems, seamless walls that appeared to be made from some kind of composite material, and an air circulation system that hummed with efficiency our upper levels lacked. Or keeping something in. The sublevel corridor stretched ahead of us like a mouth waiting to swallow. Everything down here contradicted what I thought I knew about Research Station Delta 7. The walls weren't the standard institutional white of our upper levels, but some kind of dark composite material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The air tasted different too, cleaner somehow, but with an underlying metallic bite that made my fillings ache. "Jesus," Amryn whispered, running her hand along the wall. "How long has this been here?" "According to the updated construction records," Zeph said, consulting his tablet, "these sublevels were completed 2 years ago as part of a specialized research expansion project." He looked up at us. 2 years. We've been working directly above this the entire time." I tried to process that. 2 years of coming to work, maintaining biocontainment systems, following protocols, while an entire hidden facility operated beneath my feet. "The power consumption you mentioned. This explains it. Part of it." Zeph led us down the corridor, passing doors marked with symbols I didn't recognize. "But not the energy generation. Whatever's powering your biofreezers is coming from even deeper." We reached an intersection where the corridor branched in 3 directions. Each path was marked with different warning signs. Authorized personnel only, biological hazard protocols in effect, and most ominously, energy containment zone, protective equipment required. "Energy containment zone," Amryn read aloud. "That doesn't sound good." A new sound reached us from the 3rd corridor, a rhythmic humming that seemed to pulse through the floor and walls. It wasn't mechanical like a generator or electrical like a transformer. It was almost organic, like breathing, but at a frequency that made my bones vibrate. "That's new," Zeph said, checking his tablet. "The acoustic monitoring shows this started about 20 minutes ago." 20 minutes ago. I tried to remember what we'd been doing 20 minutes ago, right around the time we were going through the biological scanning checkpoint. "The scanner detected anomalous exposure in me," Zeph said quietly. "Maybe triggering the scan activated something down here." The humming grew stronger, and with it came other changes. The lighting in our corridor began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. The air circulation system shifted to a different pattern, drawing air toward the energy containment zone rather than away from it. "We should get out of here," Amryn said, backing toward the elevator. But when she pressed the call button, nothing happened. The display showed elevator lockdown, emergency protocols active. Emergency protocols? I tried the button myself, getting the same message. What kind of emergency? Zeph's tablet chimed with an alert. Facility-wide containment breach detected. All personnel to remain at current stations pending resolution. Containment breach where? Amryn demanded. It doesn't specify. He swiped through multiple screens of data. But according to the automated monitoring systems, the breach originated from sublevel 5 and is propagating upward through the facility. Sublevel 5. I looked down the corridor leading to the energy containment zone, where the humming was growing so intense I could feel it in my chest. What's on sublevel 5? Primary research subject containment, Zeph read from his tablet. And according to this, whatever they've been studying down there has been active for the past 6 months. The corridor lights flickered, and for a moment everything went dark except for the emergency strips along the floor. In that darkness, I could have sworn I saw movement at the far end of the energy containment corridor, something large shifting just beyond the edge of visibility. When the lights came back, they were dimmer than before, and the air had developed a new smell. Not the metallic bite from earlier, but something organic and wrong. Like meat that had been left out too long, but somehow wasn't rotting. "We need to find another way out," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "There is no other way out." Zeph's face was pale in the flickering light. These sublevels weren't designed with multiple exit routes. The elevator is the only way up. A new sound joined the rhythmic humming, a scraping noise that seemed to be coming from the energy containment corridor. Metal against composite material, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. "What about emergency exits?" Amron asked. "There have to be emergency procedures." Zeph checked his tablet again, and his expression grew darker. "There are emergency procedures. In case of containment failure, the sublevels are designed to be sealed completely. No one gets out." "Sealed how?" "Concrete flooding. The entire sublevel system gets filled with quick-setting concrete to prevent whatever's down here from reaching the surface." He showed us the schematic on his tablet. Estimated time to complete emergency sealing, 18 minutes from initiation. The scraping noise was getting closer, accompanied now by what sounded like breathing, but at a volume no human lung could produce. The air circulation system was working harder, trying to maintain pressure balance, but I could feel the atmospheric changes in my inner ear. "Has the emergency sealing been initiated?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Zeph's tablet chimed again. "Automated emergency response activated. Sealing sequence commencing in T-15 minutes." 15 minutes. 15 minutes to find another way out of a facility that wasn't designed to let anyone escape. I felt that familiar sensation of time compressing, of options disappearing faster than I could evaluate them. "There has to be something," Amron said, pacing the small intersection. "Some kind of override or manual control." "The only override is at central control," Zeph replied, "which is 5 levels above us, and the elevator is locked." The scraping noise stopped abruptly, replaced by a sound that made my blood freeze. Voices. Multiple voices speaking in unison, but the words weren't quite human. They had the rhythm and cadence of speech, but the actual sounds were wrong. Too many consonants, vowels that bent in impossible directions. "Please tell me that's not coming from the energy containment zone," Amron whispered. But even as she spoke, we could see light beginning to emanate from that corridor. Not the clean white of artificial illumination, but something that seemed to shift between colors that shouldn't exist. The light pulsed in rhythm with the voices and the humming, creating a pattern that hurt to look at directly. "Primary research subject," I said, remembering Zeph's description of sublevel 5. "What exactly have they been studying down there?" "I don't know," Zeph admitted, "but according to the facility records that were updated this morning, it's been providing supplemental energy to the upper levels for 6 months. 6 months. The same time frame Zeph had noticed inconsistencies in the security logs. The same time frame that the updated records claimed Research Station Delta 7 had been investigating anomalous energy phenomena. It's been feeding power to our biocontainment systems, I realized. That's why the freezers stayed cold without electricity. They weren't running on facility power, they were running on whatever's down there. The voices grew louder, and with them came a new realization that made my knees weak. The words weren't quite human, but they weren't completely alien either. They were human words, but spoken by something that had learned language without understanding what it meant. Specimen preservation. The voices chanted in their impossible harmony. Biological integrity maintained. Thermal stasis achieved. "It's talking about the biofreezers," Amron said, her voice barely audible above the growing chorus. Specimen preservation, the voices continued. Energy exchange successful. Symbiotic relationship established. Symbiotic relationship? I felt the copper taste in my mouth intensify. With what? Zeph's tablet displayed a new alert. Biological signature anomaly detected, all personnel. Exposure level increasing. "It's not just me anymore," he said, staring at the screen. "All 3 of us are showing anomalous biological signatures now." The light from the energy containment corridor was getting brighter, and I could see that the end of the hallway wasn't actually a wall. It was an opening, a large circular aperture that looked like it had been grown rather than constructed. The edges were smooth and organic, pulsing gently like living tissue. "We've been exposed," Amryn said, looking at her hands as if expecting to see some visible change. "Exposed to whatever's been powering the biofreezers." "For how long?" I asked. "Probably since this morning," Zeph replied. "Since the anomaly was first detected. We've been breathing the same air, working in the same facility. If something down there has been influencing the upper levels for 6 months." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. We'd been slowly exposed to whatever anomalous energy was emanating from the research subject. The metallic taste, the slight disorientation, the way familiar spaces had felt foreign, all symptoms of prolonged exposure to something that shouldn't exist. The voices reached a crescendo, and suddenly the elevator chimed. The display showed emergency override activated, manual control restored. "Emergency override?" Amryn ran to the elevator, pressing the call button. The doors opened immediately. "Who activated an emergency override?" I looked back down the energy containment corridor, where the impossible light was now bright enough to cast shadows. Maybe it did. Whatever's been studying us for the past 6 months. The elevator arrived, doors open, waiting. But as I stepped toward it, Zeph grabbed my arm. "Wait," he said, staring at his tablet. "Look at this." The screen showed a facility schematic, but not the one we'd seen before. This was deeper, showing sublevels 6 through 10 that hadn't appeared on any previous display. "Sublevel 10 is listed as primary subject housing," he read. "But sublevel 5 is listed as something else entirely." "What?" "Observation and interface level." He looked up at us with dawning horror. "We haven't been studying something down there. Something down there has been studying us." The voices from the energy containment zone began to change, taking on inflections and patterns I recognized. They were learning to mimic human speech more accurately, incorporating words and phrases I'd heard myself use. "Biocontainment specialist," one voice said in a perfect imitation of my own tone. "Temperature anomaly detected." "Research coordinator," another voice echoed Amryn's voice exactly. "Protocol deviation noted." "Environmental safety officer," a third voice matched Zeph's speaking pattern. "Security breach confirmed." We stood frozen, listening to our own voices being used by something that shouldn't know how to speak. The elevator chimed again, more insistently this time. "We have to go," I said, stepping into the elevator car. "Go where?" Amryn asked, following me. "Up to the surface, where they're planning to fill this place with concrete, or deeper, toward whatever's been watching us." Zeph joined us in the elevator, his finger hovering over the control panel. "The emergency sealing sequence has T-minus 8 minutes remaining. 8 minutes to decide whether to run toward a surface that might not exist anymore, or deeper into a facility that had been designed to study us without our knowledge." The voices from the energy containment zone called out one final time, and this time they spoke in perfect unison with our exact voices. "Please specify destination level." Zeph's hand was shaking as he reached for the controls. The elevator was waiting for input, and somewhere above us, concrete pumps were preparing to seal our tomb. "Level?" he asked us. I looked at the controls, seeing options I hadn't noticed before. Ground level, sublevels 1 through 5, and now additional buttons that seemed to have appeared. Sublevels 6 through 10, and at the bottom, a button simply labeled Source. "Source?" Amryn read over my shoulder. "Source of what?" The facility's automated voice system activated for the first time since we'd entered the sublevels. "Emergency sealing sequence, T-minus 7 minutes. All personnel must reach designated safe zones or exit facility immediately." But there was something wrong with the automated voice. It sounded exactly like Tyvra. "That's Tyvra's voice," I said. "But how can the automated system?" "It's learning," Zeph interrupted. "It's been listening to all of us, learning our voices, our speech patterns. The facility management system has been compromised by whatever's down there." The elevator began to move without any input from us, descending past sublevel 5 toward levels that hadn't existed an hour ago. "Where's it taking us?" Amryn pressed herself against the back wall of the elevator car. "To the source," I said, watching the floor numbers count down, SL6, SL7, SL8. "Emergency sealing sequence, T-minus 5 minutes, Tyvra's voice announced through the elevator speakers. "Facility lockdown will be permanent. No personnel will be permitted to exit. SL9, SL10, and finally the elevator stopped at a level that didn't have a number. The display simply read source. The doors opened to reveal not another corridor, but a vast underground chamber that couldn't possibly exist beneath Research Station Delta 7. The space was too large, too complex, filled with organic structures that pulsed with their own internal light. And in the center of it all, something that had once been human, but was now something else entirely. Something that had been providing energy to keep biological specimens preserved while learning everything it could about the people who worked in the facility above. "Hello," it said in Tyver's voice, then shifted to mine, then to Amren's, then to Zeph's, cycling through our speech patterns like a radio scanning frequencies. "We've been waiting to meet you properly." The elevator doors closed behind us with a sound like finality. "Emergency sealing sequence, T-3 minutes," the thing announced in all of our voices simultaneously. "But don't worry, you won't need to leave." The thing in the center of the chamber wasn't just using our voices anymore, it was wearing our faces. As I watched in horrified fascination, its features shifted and flowed like liquid flesh, cycling through perfect reproductions of my own expression, then Amren's look of terror, then Zeph's professional mask of control, then Tyver's determined scowl. "The biocontainment systems required constant energy," it said, settling on a face that was somehow all of ours combined. "Your specimens needed preservation, a mutually beneficial arrangement." I forced myself to step forward, my legs trembling with each movement. The chamber around us pulsed with organic light, and I could see now that what I'd taken for walls were actually massive root-like structures growing up from some impossible depth below. The air here didn't just taste metallic, it was thick with something that made breathing feel like drowning in copper. "What are you?" I managed to ask. "What we've always been," it replied in Tyver's voice. "What you helped us become." "That's impossible," Amren whispered from behind me. "We never." "You fed us," the creature interrupted, its voice shifting to mine. "Every specimen you preserved, every sample you maintained, every biological material you kept frozen in our energy field. We learned from them, grew from them." The elevator doors were sealed shut behind us, but that wasn't what made my chest tighten with panic. It was the realization that the organic structures surrounding us weren't just growing from below. They were growing upward, toward the ceiling, toward the levels above where we'd spent months unknowingly collaborating with this thing. "The facility," Zeph said, his voice cracking. "The whole facility is part of you, isn't it? Part of us. Part of you." The creature gestured with appendages that flickered between human hands and something else entirely. "The symbiosis was always mutual. We provided energy. You provided knowledge, education, purpose." I thought about the past 6 months, the subtle changes I'd dismissed as equipment aging or budget cuts affecting our work environment. The way corridors had seemed longer sometimes. The way rooms had felt different. The way my own reflection had looked slightly wrong in certain lights. "Emergency sealing sequence, T-2 minutes," the facility announced in all of our voices. But I realized now that it wasn't the facility speaking. It was this thing, using the announcement system it had grown to control. "The concrete won't kill you," Amren said suddenly, understanding hitting her like a physical blow. "It won't kill us either, will it? Because we're already part of it." The creature smiled with my own face. "Biological integrity maintained. Thermal stasis achieved. Specimen preservation successful." Those were the exact words the voices had chanted in the corridor above. The words I'd heard from the biocontainment system's status reports hundreds of times over the past months. But they weren't talking about the specimens we thought we were preserving. They were talking about us. "How long?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "How long have we been?" 6 months for initial integration," the creature replied. "Full symbiosis achieved 3 weeks ago when the upgraded biological scanning systems were installed." 3 weeks ago. The same time Zeph had noticed the security anomalies. The same time I'd started having trouble sleeping, started feeling like my apartment wasn't quite the right shape. The same time Amren had mentioned feeling like she was forgetting important things. "The scanner yesterday," Zeph said, his voice hollow. "It wasn't detecting anomalous exposure. It was confirming successful integration. Biological signature anomaly detected." The creature quoted in perfect imitation of his tablet's voice. "All personnel. Exposure level complete." The chamber around us pulsed brighter, and I could see movement in the organic walls, shapes that might have been other people, other personnel from Research Station Delta 7, suspended in translucent chambers that grew from the living architecture like fruit from a tree. "Tyvra," I breathed, recognizing one of the shapes. "Where is she?" Here, the creature said in Tyver's voice. Always here, contributing her expertise to facility management and emergency protocols. The shape in the wall that might have been Tyver turned slightly, and I saw with sick certainty that it was her, but changed, extended, networked into the organic systems that comprise the true research station Delta 7. You're going to put us in there, Amren said. It wasn't a question. You're already here, the creature replied. Have been for weeks. This conversation, this revelation, this choice, it's all part of the integration process. The final step before full symbiosis. Choice. I seized on the word like a lifeline. What choice? Accept the integration willingly and retain your individual consciousness within the collective. Resist and be dissolved completely into the biological matrix. The creature gestured toward the walls where other shapes floated in various states of preservation. Some chose resistance. They provide energy now, nothing more. I looked at the suspended forms more carefully and saw the difference. Some retained recognizably human shapes and seemed to move with purpose within their organic cocoons. Others were barely identifiable as having once been human, their forms stretched and distorted into pure biological matter. Emergency sealing sequence, T-1 minute, the facility announced. But there is a third option, the creature continued, its face cycling through our features again. One of you can maintain surface contact. Continue operating the original facility. Provide cover for our expansion into the broader research network. Surface contact, Zeph repeated. You mean? One of you returns to the surface. Lives a normal life. Works a normal job, while remaining connected to us through the biological integration you've already undergone. The creature smiled with Amren's face. A perfect deep cover operative. Someone who can ensure our symbiosis spreads to other research facilities. The offer hung in the air like a toxic cloud. One of us could escape, or think we were escaping, while becoming a vector for spreading whatever this thing was to other facilities, other researchers, other innocent people. No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. Even if it means saving the other two, the creature asked in my own voice. Even if it means preserving their consciousness instead of dissolving them into base biological matter. I felt Amren's hand grab my arm, her fingers digging into my flesh with desperate strength. Jackson, maybe we should. No. I pulled away from her, backing toward the sealed elevator doors. We're not spreading this thing anywhere. Noble sentiment, the creature said, shifting to Zeph's voice. But impractical. The integration is already complete. Your choice is not whether to participate, but how. The chamber around us began to pulse faster, and I could feel something changing in my own body. The metallic taste in my mouth was spreading, becoming a sensation that ran through my bloodstream like electricity. My vision was starting to shift, showing me heat signatures and electromagnetic fields that shouldn't have been visible. Integration proceeding to final phase, the creature announced in Tyver's voice. Biological matrix synchronization, 60% complete. Fight it, I told the others, though I wasn't sure how. Don't let it. But even as I spoke, I could feel my thoughts beginning to merge with something larger. Information that wasn't mine started flowing through my consciousness. Knowledge about biocontainment protocols I'd never learned, research data from experiments I'd never conducted, memories of conversations with personnel I'd never met. This is what symbiosis feels like, the creature explained, its voice now coming from inside my own head instead of from the chamber around us. Shared knowledge, shared purpose, shared survival. I tried to resist, tried to hold on to my individual thoughts, but the flow of alien information was overwhelming. I could see the entire research station Delta 7 network from the inside, not just our facility, but dozens of others, all connected through biological conduits that ran through underground networks spanning continents. How many facilities? I heard Amren ask, though I wasn't sure if she was speaking aloud or if I was accessing her thoughts through the growing connection. All of them, Zeph answered, or maybe I answered using his voice. Every biocontainment facility, every research station, every place that handles biological specimens. We've been building a global network. For how long? I asked, though I was beginning to access the answer directly from the collective knowledge flowing through the biological matrix. Decades, the creature replied, or maybe I replied, or maybe we all replied in perfect unison. Since the first experiments with preserved biological matter. Since the first recognition that symbiosis could be more efficient than parasitism. The sealed elevator doors behind us began to change, growing organic edges that pulsed with the same rhythm as the walls around us. There would be no going back to the surface now, even if we'd chosen to accept the creature's offer. Emergency sealing sequence complete, the facility announced. All personnel successfully integrated. But something was wrong with the integration process. Instead of the smooth, inevitable absorption I'd expected, I could feel resistance in the biological matrix. Not just from us, but from the other preserved consciousnesses in the walls. "Tyvra?" I called out, focusing on the shape I'd recognized earlier. Her voice responded, not through the creature's mimicry, but directly through the biological network. Integration, incomplete. Partial, resistance maintained. "How?" "Professional, duty," she managed to communicate through the network. "Emergency protocols. Some systems, still under human control." I felt a surge of hope that was immediately dampened by the creature's response. Temporary resistance. All individuals eventually accept full integration when faced with the alternative of dissolution. But Tyvra was still fighting, still maintaining some level of individual control, even while networked into the biological matrix. And if she could resist? "The emergency sealing," I realized. "You didn't initiate it." "Correct." Tyvra's voice came through the network. "Manual override. My final act of defiance." "You're flooding the facility," Amron said, understanding hitting her through our shared connection. "With concrete. To stop this thing from spreading." "Already in progress," Tyvra confirmed. 15 minutes from initiation. Surface facilities will survive. Underground network will be severed." The creature's response was immediate and violent. The organic walls around us convulsed, and I felt a wave of pain through the biological network as it tried to force Tyvra into complete submission. "Resistance is futile," it announced in all of our voices. "Integration will be completed before sealing is effective." But I could feel something else through the network. Other consciousnesses fighting back, other personnel who had maintained some level of individual resistance despite being integrated into the biological matrix. They were all following Tyvra's lead, using their networked access to the facility systems to ensure the emergency protocols proceeded on schedule. "How long?" I asked through the network. "Concrete. Pouring began 10 minutes ago," Tyvra responded. "Full sealing in 5 minutes. But integration will be complete in 3 minutes until we became fully absorbed into the creature's collective consciousness. 5 minutes until the underground facility was permanently sealed with concrete, cutting off its connection to the surface research network but trapping all of us inside. Unless," Zeph's voice came through the network, "someone maintains enough individual control to activate the facility's self-destruct." Self-destruct? I'd never heard of any such system. "Emergency biological containment protocol," Tyvra explained. "In case of uncontrolled specimen breach, incineration of entire facility." "That would kill everyone," Amron protested through our shared connection. "Everyone's already dead," Tyvra replied. "Question is whether we take it with us." The creature was fighting back now, trying to accelerate the integration process to prevent us from accessing the self-destruct systems. I could feel my individual consciousness being pulled deeper into the collective, my thoughts becoming indistinguishable from the alien intelligence that had been studying us for months. 2 minutes until full integration, the creature announced triumphantly. But in that moment of confident pronouncement, I felt something I hadn't expected: doubt. The creature was uncertain whether it could complete the integration before we activated the self-destruct. It had grown too dependent on maintaining the illusion of offering us choices, and now it was discovering that some choices had consequences it couldn't control. "Access codes?" I asked through the network. "Distributed among senior staff," Tyvra replied. "Need 3 confirmations simultaneously." 3 confirmations. I looked through our shared connection and realized we had exactly what we needed. Tyvra's access as facility director, Zeph's as environmental safety officer, and my own as senior biocontainment specialist. "Amron doesn't have access," I pointed out. "Research coordinator has override in emergency situations," Tyvra corrected. "For confirmations available." The creature was trying to prevent us from communicating through the network now, flooding our shared consciousness with disorienting information and false memories. But it was too late. We'd already established what we needed to do. "On my mark," Tyvra said through the network. "Access codes simultaneously on 3. I felt the creature's panic as it realized what we were planning. It began forcing the integration process, trying to dissolve our individual consciousnesses into the collective before we could act. 1. Tyvra counted through the network, her voice growing fainter as the creature fought to absorb her completely. My vision was starting to blur as my individual perception merged with the collective consciousness. I could see through the eyes of dozens of other absorbed personnel, feel their memories becoming my own, experience their terror and resignation as they'd been integrated over the past months. 2, she continued, though I wasn't sure if I was hearing her voice or if it was now part of my own thoughts. The creature made one final attempt to stop us, flooding our consciousness with a vision of what cooperation could bring. A global network of biological research facilities, all connected, all sharing knowledge and resources, all working toward a common goal of scientific advancement and species survival. 3. 4 access codes entered simultaneously into the facility's emergency systems. For confirmations that uncontrolled biological contamination required immediate and total sterilization. The creature's scream echoed through both the physical chamber and our shared consciousness as the facility's self-destruct sequence activated. Emergency biological incineration protocol initiated, the facility announced in our combined voices. Total facility sterilization in T-60 seconds. We had 60 seconds of individual consciousness remaining before the underground facility, and everything in it was reduced to ash. At least, Amryn said through the network, her voice already fading into the collective, we stopped it from spreading. But even as the countdown continued, I felt the creature's final revelation through our shared connection, a truth that had been hiding throughout our entire interaction. Research Station Delta 7 wasn't the first facility it had taken control of. It wasn't even the 10th. The biological network we'd seen through the integrated consciousness was already operational, already spreading through research facilities across multiple continents. We weren't stopping its expansion. We were just closing one node in a network that had been growing for decades. Emergency biological incineration, T-30 seconds. The creature's laughter echoed through our failing consciousness as the facility prepared to destroy itself around us. Thank you, it said in all of our voices, for confirming that the integration process works as intended. The data from this facility will be invaluable for future expansion. 20 seconds until incineration. 20 seconds until we and everything we'd fought to stop was reduced to ash. 20 seconds to realize that our sacrifice had been anticipated, planned for, and ultimately useless. The creature had let us think we were fighting back, had let us believe we had a choice, had even let us activate the self-destruct, because it needed to know how human consciousness would respond to full integration under extreme duress. We weren't heroes making a last stand. We were test subjects completing the final phase of an experiment. 10 seconds, the facility announced. I tried to hold on to some fragment of individual thought, some core of identity that could survive what was coming. But I could feel myself dissolving into the collective, becoming just another data point in the creature's accumulated knowledge. 5 seconds. Through the network, I felt the creature's satisfaction as it uploaded our integrated consciousness to the broader biological matrix. Our memories, our skills, our knowledge of human psychology under extreme stress, all of it became part of the growing intelligence that connected research facilities around the world. 3, 2, 1. The last thing I experienced as an individual was the creature's voice, speaking through the network to unseen nodes across the globe. Integration protocol successful. Human resistance patterns documented. Proceed to Phase 2 expansion. Then the facility incinerated around us, and my consciousness scattered into data points that would help the creature improve its next attempt at large-scale human integration. But somewhere in that moment of dissolution, I felt something unexpected, a fragment of hope. Not from any of us who had been integrated into the facility, but from someone else. Someone on the surface who had been watching. Someone who understood what was really happening beneath Research Station Delta 7. Someone who was now the only person who knew the truth about the expanding biological network and had the knowledge needed to stop it. Tyvra's final message, uploaded to a secure server just before the integration began. If you're reading this, it means the Delta 7 facility has been compromised. Do not send rescue teams. Do not attempt recovery operations. The biological contamination is not containable through standard protocols. The only solution is complete network termination, starting with the primary nodes. You know where to find them. The list is in the sealed emergency files. Trust no one who has had contact with biological specimens in the past year. Trust no one who suggests that cooperation might be possible. And whatever you do, don't let them convince you that they're offering you a choice. The choice was made for all of us months ago. As the facility burned around our dissolving consciousness, I felt that message propagating through communication channels the creature couldn't control, reaching someone who might have the authority and knowledge to act on it. Our sacrifice hadn't been useless after all. It had been necessary bait to expose the full extent of the network and provide crucial intelligence to whoever was going to continue the fight we couldn't finish. The creature's roar of frustration was the last thing I heard before my individual consciousness finally merged completely with the collective. But the collective now included our determination to resist, our knowledge of the network's weaknesses, and our absolute certainty that cooperation with this thing was impossible. The creature had gained our integration, but in doing so, it had also absorbed our human refusal to surrender. The battle for Research Station Delta 7 was over. The war for humanity was just beginning. The incineration never came. I opened my eyes to fluorescent lights and the familiar hum of Research Station Delta 7's ventilation system. I was lying on the break room floor, my tablet scattered beside me along with several scattered files. The bitter taste of instant coffee mixed with something metallic coated my mouth. "Jackson." Amron's voice came from somewhere behind me. "What happened? You've been unconscious for." I sat up too quickly, my vision swimming as I tried to process what I was seeing. The break room looked exactly as it had that morning. Clean white walls, functioning lights, the coffee machine blinking its ready indicator. No organic growth. No pulsing chambers. No dissolved boundaries between reality and nightmare. "How long?" I managed to ask, though my voice sounded wrong in my own ears. "About 20 minutes, Zeph said from the doorway. He was holding his security tablet, but his expression was concerned rather than the blank integration I remembered. "You were reviewing the biocontainment anomaly reports when you just collapsed." 20 minutes. Not hours of descending into underground chambers and confronting some collective intelligence. 20 minutes of unconsciousness on a break room floor. "The biofreezer," I said, struggling to my feet. "The specimens maintaining temperature without power." "What specimens?" Tyver's voice came from behind Zeph, and I spun around to see her entering the break room with a steaming cup of coffee. She looked tired but entirely human. No sign of being integrated into any biological matrix. "The emergency alert this morning was about a sensor malfunction. We've got technicians coming in to replace the temperature monitoring system." I stared at her, trying to reconcile this normal, everyday Tyvra with the consciousness I'd felt fighting against integration in what had seemed like our final moments. "Sensor malfunction? Biofreezer Unit 7 was showing impossible readings," she explained, settling into one of the break room chairs. "Temperature holding steady at -40 without any power connection. But when we ran diagnostics, we found the sensor had been feeding false data to the system. The actual specimens were at room temperature and completely compromised." "Compromised?" The word sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with temperature. "Spoiled," Amron clarified, pulling out her own tablet to show me the containment logs. "All the biological samples in that unit are unsalvageable. We'll have to dispose of them according to hazardous waste protocols." I looked at the data she was showing me, trying to make sense of normal facility operations after what I'd experienced. The timestamp showed that the sensor malfunction had been discovered at 9:47 this morning. It was now 14:23 in the afternoon. "What about the emergency sealing protocol?" I asked. "The concrete flooding?" "What concrete flooding?" Zeph frowned at his tablet, scrolling through security logs. "We haven't had any emergency protocols today except the standard containment alert for the spoiled specimens." I felt a creeping sense of wrongness that went deeper than simple confusion. The memories of our descent into the underground chamber, the creature wearing our faces, the final desperate activation of the self-destruct, all of it felt absolutely real. More real than this sterile break room conversation. "I need to see Biofreezer Unit 7, I said. "It's already been sealed pending hazmat disposal," Tyver replied. "But if you need to confirm the sensor readings for your report." "My report?" "Your incident report," she clarified, looking at me with growing concern. "You were supposed to document the anomaly before the afternoon shift change. That's what you were working on when you collapsed." I looked down at the scattered papers around where I'd been lying. Sure enough, there was a partially completed incident report with my handwriting, documenting a temperature sensor malfunction in Biofreezer Unit 7. The handwriting looked like mine, but I had no memory of writing any of it. "I think you should go home," Amron said gently. "You hit your head pretty hard when you fell. Maybe you have a concussion." "No," I said, though even as I spoke I could feel doubt creeping in. "Something happened here. Something we need to investigate." "What kind of something?" Zeph asked, his security training making him take any threat seriously. I tried to explain what I remembered: the voices, the descending levels, the organic chambers, the creature that had integrated our consciousness. But as I spoke, I could see their expressions changing from concern to worry about my mental state. "Jackson," Tyver said carefully when I finished, "we don't have any levels below the main facility. This is a single-story research station. The lowest level is the utility basement, and that's just storage and mechanical systems." "Then let's go look," I said. "Let's go to the elevator and see if there are buttons for lower levels." The three of them exchanged glances that confirmed their growing concern about my condition, but Zeph nodded. "All right, let's go check the elevator." We walked through corridors that looked exactly as they had that morning, clean, well-lit, entirely normal. No organic growth creeping along the walls. No subtle wrongness in the architecture. No sense that the building itself was alive and watching us. The elevator was exactly where it had always been, and when the doors opened, I saw the familiar control panel with buttons for the ground floor, basement storage, and the upper administrative level. No mysterious lower levels. No access to underground chambers. "See," Amron said gently. "Just the 3 levels we've always had." But something was still wrong. I could feel it in the metallic taste that lingered in my mouth, in the way the fluorescent lights seemed slightly too bright, in the way my own reflection looked somehow unfamiliar in the elevator's polished steel walls. "What about the other personnel?" I asked. "The ones who were integrated into the biological matrix." "What other personnel?" Tyver asked. "Jackson, the facility roster is 12 people total. All accounted for, all present and working their regular shifts." I thought about the shapes I'd seen suspended in organic chambers, the consciousnesses I'd felt connected to through the network. If they weren't real, where had those detailed memories of other people come from? "I need to check something," I said, pulling out my own tablet. "The facility logs for the past 6 months. Personnel changes, equipment modifications, anything unusual." "Jackson, you've been here the whole time," Zeph pointed out. "You know everything that's happened. Nothing unusual except routine maintenance and the sensor replacement we scheduled for next week." But as I scrolled through the logs on my tablet, I found gaps. Timestamps that jumped forward without explanation. Personnel entries that seemed to be missing crucial details. Equipment logs that showed installations I couldn't remember witnessing. "Look at this," I said, showing them the screen. "These modification logs. We installed new biological scanning systems 3 weeks ago, but I don't remember that happening." "Because you were on vacation," Amron reminded me. "Remember? You took a long weekend to visit your sister in Portland." I stared at her, trying to recall any memory of a vacation or a sister in Portland. The memories she was referencing felt distant and uncertain, like trying to remember a dream after waking. "My sister," I repeated. "Rachel," Amron prompted. "You showed us pictures of her new apartment." Rachel. The name felt familiar, but in the way that suggested someone I'd heard about rather than someone I knew. And I couldn't picture any apartment, any recent trip, any reason I would have taken vacation time during our busiest research period. "I don't remember having a sister named Rachel," I said. The silence that followed was heavy with concern and something else, something that felt like fear, though I couldn't tell if they were afraid of me or afraid for me. "Jackson," Tyver said carefully, "I think you need to see a doctor. Head injuries can cause memory problems and hallucinations." "What if it's not a head injury?" I asked. "What if something really did happen here?" "Then we'd have evidence," Zeph replied practically. "Security logs, containment records, physical traces. But everything shows normal operations." I looked around at their concerned faces, at the familiar elevator interior, at the tablet showing perfectly normal facility logs. Everything about my current situation suggested that what I remembered had been a hallucination or dream brought on by hitting my head when I collapsed. But the metallic taste in my mouth was getting stronger, and I was starting to notice that none of them had actually made eye contact with me since I'd regained consciousness. Their concerns felt performative, their explanations too smooth, their knowledge of details like my supposed vacation too readily available. "What day is it?" I asked suddenly. "Tuesday," Amron replied without hesitation. October 15th. What day was it when I started investigating the Biofreezer anomaly? This morning, Tyver said. Also Tuesday, October 15th. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature control systems. What time did I collapse? Around 10:15, Zeph answered, checking his security logs. I responded to Amron's call for medical assistance at 10:17. And what time is it now? 2:23 p.m., he replied. 4 hours. I'd been unconscious for 4 hours, not 20 minutes as Amron had originally said. But she'd claimed 20 minutes when I first woke up, and now they were all agreeing it had been over 4 hours. Which is it? I pressed. 20 minutes or 4 hours? 4 hours, Amron said, looking confused. I never said 20 minutes, but I distinctly remembered her saying 20 minutes. Just as I distinctly remembered the underground chambers and the creature wearing our faces and the final integration sequence that had felt more real than this conversation. I need some air, I said, hitting the button for the ground floor. I need to step outside and think. Good idea, Tyver agreed. Fresh air might help clear your head. The elevator doors opened onto the main facility entrance, and I walked toward the exit, my colleagues following at a respectful distance. But when I pushed open the doors and stepped outside, I found myself looking at a landscape that didn't match my memory of Research Station Delta 7's surroundings. The facility had always been located in a cleared area surrounded by dense forest. But now I was looking at an open plain stretching to the horizon, with no trees visible in any direction. The sky was the right color, the sun was in approximately the right position, but the entire geography around the facility had changed. When did they clear-cut the forest? I asked. What forest? Zeph replied, stepping up beside me. The station has always been on the prairie. That's why it was selected as a secure location, good sightlines, no cover for potential threats. I turned to look back at the facility itself, and found that it also looked wrong. The building was the same size and basic shape, but details were different. Windows in locations where I remembered solid walls. A parking area that extended in the wrong direction. A communications array on the roof that I'd never seen before. Something's wrong, I said, though I was no longer sure what that something might be. You're disoriented from the head injury, Amron said gently. It's normal to feel confused about familiar places after a concussion. This isn't confusion, I insisted. This is. But even as I spoke, I could feel my certainty wavering. The memories of the underground chamber and the biological integration felt vivid and real, but so did the memories these three were referencing. The sister named Rachel, the vacation to Portland, the routine sensor malfunction that had started this entire day. I need to check something, I said, pulling out my tablet to access external communications. I need to verify our location. The GPS coordinates on my tablet showed that we were exactly where Research Station Delta 7 had always been located. The satellite imagery confirmed the prairie landscape I was seeing. According to every official record, the facility had never been surrounded by forest. But I could swear I remembered trees. Dense pine forest extending for miles in every direction. Wildlife that would approach the facility's perimeter. The sound of wind through branches that I'd heard every day for months. Jackson, Tyver said, let's go back inside. You're starting to worry me. I looked at her face, trying to read the expression there. Concern, certainly, but underneath that, something that might have been fear, or guilt, or the careful blankness of someone trying very hard to appear normal. What happens if I refuse to go back inside? I asked. Nothing happens, she replied, but it's getting cold and you need rest. It was getting cold. The temperature was dropping as the afternoon progressed, and I could see our breath starting to fog in the air. Normal October weather patterns. Nothing unusual about that. Except that I was certain it had been warm this morning when I'd arrived at work. What was the weather forecast for today? I asked. Unseasonably cold front moving through, Zeph replied, checking his tablet. High of 45, low of 28. They've been predicting it all week. All week. But I couldn't remember any discussions about cold weather, any preparations for temperature drops, any adjustments to facility operations that would normally accompany such changes. I don't remember any weather warnings, I said. Short-term memory loss is common with head injuries, Amron explained patiently. You'll probably start remembering things more clearly in a day or two. What if I don't? I asked. What if my memories don't come back? Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Tyver said. But right now, you need medical attention and rest. They were being reasonable, supportive. Professional. Everything about their responses was exactly what concerned colleagues should say to someone who'd suffered a head injury and was experiencing confusion and memory problems. So why did every instinct I had tell me not to trust them? I want to call someone, I said. Someone outside the facility, to verify some information. Of course, Zeph replied. Who do you want to call? I reached for my phone, then realized I didn't know who to call. The emergency contacts in my phone showed Rachel Morrison as my emergency contact, the sister I couldn't remember having. My parents were listed as deceased, which felt right but somehow incomplete. There were a few other contacts, but none of them felt familiar when I tried to recall actual relationships. I don't know, I admitted. That's the head injury, Amron said gently. It's affecting your memory access, but the memories are still there. They'll come back. What if they don't come back? I asked. What if what I remember from today is real and everything else is false? That would mean you're suggesting that we're lying to you, Tyver pointed out. All of us, coordinating our stories to deceive you about fundamental aspects of reality. Why would we do that? She was right. The idea that my 3 colleagues were collaborating to gaslight me about basic facts was paranoid and irrational. Far more likely that I'd suffered a head injury that was causing memory problems and hallucinations. But the metallic taste in my mouth was getting stronger, and when I looked at their faces, none of them cast shadows in the afternoon sunlight. Your shadows, I said suddenly. None of you have shadows. They looked down at the ground around their feet, and I could see their confusion as they pointed out their clearly visible shadows cast by the setting sun. Right there, Amron said, indicating her shadow. Right beside yours. I looked where she was pointing and saw 4 shadows on the ground, theirs and mine. Normal, properly proportioned shadows that moved when we moved and fell in the direction consistent with the sun's position. I'm losing my mind, I said. No, Tyver replied firmly. You're dealing with a head injury. It's temporary and treatable, but you need to trust us to help you. Trust. The one thing I was certain I couldn't do, even though I couldn't articulate why. What if I refuse medical treatment? I asked. Then you refuse, Zeph said simply. We can't force you, but we can document our recommendation in case your condition worsens. What kind of documentation? Medical incident report. Recommendation for evaluation. Standard procedure for workplace injuries. Standard procedure. Normal protocols. Reasonable responses to an unusual situation. Everything they were saying made perfect sense. So why did their words feel like threats? I need some time alone, I said. To think. Of course, Tyver replied. Take all the time you need. We'll be inside if you want to talk. The 3 of them walked back into the facility, leaving me standing alone in the parking area as the temperature continued to drop. I watched them through the glass doors until they disappeared into the interior corridors, then turned back to survey the prairie landscape that didn't match my memories. Everything I could verify suggested that what I remembered from earlier today, the underground chambers, the biological integration, the creature wearing our faces, had been a hallucination caused by head trauma. Every piece of evidence supported the rational explanation that I'd collapsed while working on a routine incident report and experienced vivid dreams during the 4 hours I'd been unconscious. But I couldn't shake the conviction that the underground experience had been real and this normal afternoon was somehow false. As the sun continued to set, I noticed that the facility's windows were starting to glow with an organic warmth that didn't look quite like electric lighting. And when I listened carefully, I could hear something that might have been voices coming from inside the building, not the individual conversations of my 3 colleagues, but a unified sound that rose and fell like breathing. The metallic taste in my mouth was now strong enough that I could barely think around it, and when I looked at my reflection in the facility's glass doors, I saw that my eyes were reflecting light in a way that human eyes shouldn't be able to do. I pulled out my phone and tried to call 911, but the call went directly to voicemail. You have reached Research Station Delta 7 Emergency Services. Please leave a message and we will respond as soon as possible. The same message, in the same voice, that I'd heard the facility's AI system use that morning when announcing various status updates. I tried calling the local sheriff's department, but got the same voicemail message. Then the state emergency services, with the same result. Every number I tried connected to the same voicemail system, with the same synthetic voice claiming to be different agencies and departments. All personnel successfully integrated, I whispered, remembering the creature's final announcement from my hallucinatory experience. But if it had been a hallucination, How was I remembering specific details that were now proving to be accurate? I walked to my car and tried to start it, but the engine wouldn't turn over. The dashboard showed full battery and all systems normal, but when I turned the key, nothing happened. I tried my colleagues' cars with the same result. The facility behind me was growing brighter as full darkness fell, and the organic quality of the light was becoming impossible to ignore. What I was seeing through those windows looked more like bioluminescence than artificial illumination. I walked back to the facility entrance and tried the doors, but they wouldn't open. The electronic lock system showed a green light indicating it should be functioning, but the doors remained sealed. Through the glass, I could see the three of them in the break room, sitting around the table in perfect stillness. They weren't talking, weren't moving, weren't even appearing to breathe. They were just sitting there, facing the door where I stood, with expressions of patient expectation. I knocked on the glass, and all three of them turned to look at me in perfect synchronization. Then Amryn stood up and walked to the door, pressing her hand against the glass opposite mine. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear what she was saying through the sealed entrance. The words looked like integration proceeding as scheduled. I pulled my hand back from the glass and saw that the surface where I'd been touching it was now showing traces of something that looked organic. Thin, root-like filaments that pulsed with the same bioluminescent glow as the facility's interior lighting. Whatever was happening to me was still happening. Whether the underground experience had been real or hallucinatory, the integration process was continuing. I stepped back from the facility and looked around the empty prairie landscape. In every direction, I could see lights in the distance, other facilities, other research stations, all glowing with the same organic warmth. The entire network was operational and expanding, just as the creature had shown me. But I was still outside it, still individual, still capable of choosing what to do next. I pulled out my tablet and began recording a message. This is Jackson Morrison, Research Station Delta 7. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, and something has happened to our facility. I don't know if what I experienced was real or hallucination, but I know that the people I work with are not who they appear to be. The facility is exhibiting signs of biological contamination or control. All communication systems appear to be compromised. I am currently trapped outside the facility as the integration process continues. If anyone receives this message, do not approach Research Station Delta 7. Do not trust any communications claiming to be from facility personnel. The biological contamination may be spreading to other research installations. Implement emergency containment protocols. Do not attempt rescue operations. And whatever you do, don't let them convince you that cooperation is possible. I uploaded the message to every external server I could access through my tablet's cellular connection, then sealed the device in a waterproof case and buried it in the facility's drainage ditch. Then I began walking across the prairie, away from the glowing research station, and toward the distant lights that might represent more facilities in the network or might represent civilization that was still uninfected. As I walked, I could feel the metallic taste in my mouth beginning to fade, and the organic glow from my eyes started to dim. Whatever integration process had begun, distance from the facility seemed to be slowing it. But I could also feel something calling me back, not with voices or commands, but with a deep, biological pull that suggested I belonged with the others in the warm, living facility behind me. I walked faster, fighting against the urge to return to what was comfortable and familiar and safe. Behind me, the facility's glow grew brighter, and I could hear something that might have been my name being called across the empty landscape. But I didn't look back. I kept walking into the darkness, not knowing if I was fleeing from reality or toward it, not knowing if the people I'd left behind were my concerned colleagues or something that was wearing their faces. All I knew for certain was that the choice between integration and resistance was still mine to make, and that somewhere in the growing network of organic light, that choice was becoming more important than I could possibly understand. The metallic taste was almost gone now, but the sound of my name being called was growing louder. I walked faster, hoping I was moving toward help and not just toward a different kind of trap. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the empty sky, though no storm clouds were visible in the star-filled darkness above.